Today we're going to be talking about some deep insights that came to me, and you already know them, but they're worth repeating and diving into as to how we can really enhance our spiritual awakening journey and be truly of service to others and really take care of ourselves. And these things that I'm going to be sharing about are enhancing to your everyday life, to the 3D like life, and to your spiritual life. And I think in a lot of ways we think of them as two separate things. You know, it's like when I get to be off in a sacred site meditating, then I'm feeding my spirit, but I can't be doing that here. There's a little bit of separation consciousness in that. And these components that I'm going to be talking about today are inclusive. When they're fed within our everyday lives, it feeds our soul. And when our soul is fed, it feeds our everyday lives. And that's actually a really good place to be and a good way of thinking about these things. So we're going to be diving into these components. Now, this came to me through an experience that I had being more in the 3D, being more in the matrix, in the city. I was dating in Phoenix, and there were a lot of beautiful benefits and experiences that came through that exploration. And there were also profound insights that I was like, oh, wow, this is really interesting because I live in a bubble. As my brother tells me every day, he's like, Bridget, you live in a Sedona bubble. And not everyone is like that. And that's not how they live. And that's not how they interact. And not everything's perfect in Sedona by any means. But we live in a bubble that's very connective and very different and unique. And so me getting to see into more of the, quote, mainstream world and how people live was really eye-opening and really helpful, because oftentimes we don't have enough contrast in our life to see relativity. And so for me, I was like, whoa, this is how people live. This is very interesting. And how is it possible to be living that way and have the spirit nourished? And some of the answer was it's not possible. And so that's the nuances that I want to get into right now so that you can truly connect, align, and continue on your path in the very best way, aligned with your highest good. So that's what we're getting into. If you haven't already, be sure to go sign up for my email list. And I also want to let you know I have a few more spots open for my Sedona Women's Retreat coming up at the end of March 30th through April 3rd. Click the link down below to sign up and to spend time with me and other amazing women in the bubble and get nourished and rejuvenated in that space. It's going to be such a blast. Okay, so now getting into it. What are these pieces I'm talking about? Bridget, tell me. Okay, I'll tell you. I'm looking at my notes. So it's really important. One of the mantras we can say in our life, or the questions we can continue to ask ourselves, and the questions we ask ourselves are profound. Like it changes our lives, the questions we ask. So does your life create room, create space, and create opening for listening, for true listening, and for life force, vitality, life force, and listening? Does your life create space for that? And it's an interesting question, and it may not. And this is an opportunity to open to redesign and align ourselves with these things that I'm calling like the soul nutrients. It's the LL, the listening and the life force required for the soul to continue on its path. So these are the two things that I'm going to be getting into deeply because they're really critical. Without the availability to truly listen, and you know that entails everything, and without the availability of life force, we're not making it. We can't do it. And we're not connected. We can't have it. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is the life force. So you've heard me talk about the matrix a lot, and the matrix, 3D reality, mainstream reality, often correlated with city living and this crazy, high pace, busy, freaking fight or flight, somehow consensus normality agreed to. I don't know how everyone agreed to this, but a lot of people are agreeing to this throughout the world, Western world, that whole thing. And it's chaos and it's fight or flight. And I think just calling it as it is really important. And an easier way of defining it is busyness, excessive busyness and hyperstimulation. And I will be the first to admit that I have been in this category for a long time. And part of it is because I truly am a creator and I love creating and I'm really extroverted and, you can see what's going on over here. And also, as my somatic coach said, which I came up with this whole thing and was getting these insights before she said this, and she said, busyness is trauma. I was like, ooh, yikes. That hits me in this area of accountability and responsibility that I did not want to be touched. And also I was ready because I had already been exploring this concept and seeing why do I have to live my life this way? And seeing other people being way more hyper busy and chaotic than I am was helpful to also see my relative busyness and start to unwind that and untangle that. So the key here is that somehow, again, it's the achiever culture or my life is just crazy and it can also be fun. A lot of my busyness came from I just love to socialize and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And realizing that truly simplicity and coming back to self, and we're going to talk about the design process in a minute, is everything. It's so necessary because we need that life force to do the big work, and we're going to go into it. So in this chaos, crazy mode, and now with technology and the dopamine hit and everyone's just in electrocution, machine looking. And you don't notice this until you have relativity. So again, I invite you to go into, say, the mountains by yourself and be like, how does that feel? And if you're like, oh my gosh, I need to be doing something, it's okay, that's interesting. Or for me, coming out of the Sedona bubble and going into the city and being like, what are people doing? People are living this way? People are choosing to live this way? This is very interesting. And what it does is this overstimulation, it spikes the adrenals. And so you're working in an adrenalized, adrenaline, cortisol, hormonal space. And especially for women, we do not operate that way. We become not good people when we're operating under those hormones. And if you haven't gone and listened to my podcast with Jocelyn Dare about this subject, go listen. And men, they can handle it more. I just said they can handle it more, but not to the degree that the culture is running at, this pace they're running at. And so what this does, especially when you add, some nice coffee to it, which instantly strikes and spikes the adrenal cortisol response, if that's the first thing that you're doing in the morning. And also if that's another good test, is if you don't have the life force, if you don't have the natural radiance to just you had a good night's sleep and you're boom, I'm ready for the day. There's something off. And I know that might sound crazy. And it's well, I can't do that in my life. I got kids, Bridget. I got this, I got that. And I know there's a lot of components to life. We're going to talk about that. We're going to break it down. I'm a Taurus. We will bring it down to earth. But just to say that when we're doing that and when we are reliant on different substances of all kinds, whether it's energy drinks or coffee, and then to get us going with energy, that means we don't have that chi. That means that we're then pulling from the kidneys, we're pulling from our savings account of energy, our Jing. If you haven't gone into that study yet, go look up Jing. We're pulling from our savings account that is very hard to rebuild. We don't have that natural chi just right there ready to go. And so for me, I wake up that way, not like every day, but I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, woohoo, I'm energized. Let's go on with the day. And I have that natural treat. If I don't, I need to sleep more. I need to rejuvenate more to make sure I have that so I can go about my day. So the key is that what starts to happen is because it's so imbalanced, the whole culture and the way of being and the lifestyle, that then you need substances to like maintain the imbalance. And then at night to chill out, then it's like you need, the weed, or you need alcohol, or you need these things to like come down from the fight or flight and from this like adrenalized response. And so it's fascinating. It's a lot. I'm going to be getting into more of the spiritual, esoteric aspects. So stick with me here. All right. Stick with me. Attention span. Let's just breathe. We can stay with this. So, but it's really important to know kind of those things that are happening going into, that's just a nervous system response that whole cities are operating under. And I mean, let's be real. I got high off of that in my early 20s. I was like, this is amazing. I was like pulsing, through the metro in Paris and the tube in London, living in LA. I was like, yes, like I almost like got off on like the like hyperstimulation of those spaces and these cultures. And then the more and more I did my healing work, the more and more I balanced myself, and it's a continual process, the more it is insane. And so now getting into the esoteric aspect of the life force component, like where is our life force at, which is where is our energy at, right? And why is this important? So to get into that, one of the things that's important to realize is that in almost every esoteric school that I've explored, I'm like, oh, let's go into Toltec, let's go into like Christian mysticism, oh, let's go into this, let's go into that, let's go into the Taoist, let's go east, all these things that I go into and explore. What is at the forefront, particularly of hitting higher states of consciousness, particularly of lucid dreaming, particularly of taking memory through death. So like being able to ascend and assimilate this life experience and go to the next rung and take, this memory into the next lifetime, is chi, is life force, is the potency of the etheric body. I have a whole video that goes into this, so you can go check that out and explore more. And I'll put the link if you're listening to this on the podcast. And it's a really important exploration and discovery. They're like, you can't, like I show up to Sergio Magana's healing school that I did a couple years ago. And it's like, okay, what's the first step in healing? What's the first step in lucid dreaming? It's like, well, we need to build up our life force. We need to build up our chi because we can't do anything without it. So this idea of like going to bed like exhausted or something, we're not going to be able to get the juice out of like our dream state, out of our sleep, that we need to. So on an esoteric level, to hit these higher states, we need the chi that's running so that it can access then the shen, and we're not pulling from the kidneys. Like there's a whole school to the whole thing. It's all Taoist, amazing. But we need this life force to hit these higher states. So I know that that's the cells campaign for you guys, because you're like, yeah, I want to have these spiritual experiences and have these deeper insights and connect more with myself and my soul. And then, as I told you and promised at the beginning, is that as you do this, it not only enhances, of course, the higher states in our spiritual path, but it makes us available for this wonderful thing called life and human connection. Because if we don't have the life force available and we're in all these crazy hormonal responses that I just discussed, and we're not in this space of calmer, at least, or a calm nervous system, and we're more in our bodies and we're more feeling in our hearts, and we've got like nice hormones going, oxytocin and serotonin, and we're like, yeah, That's the space where we connect as humans. Otherwise, we're not connecting. We're just like these zombies having these like scripted responses and programs with coping mechanisms like bumping up against each other. We're not actually bonding, intimacy, connection. And we're meant to. We are social creatures, and it is so fulfilling. That's one of the reasons we're here, is to have these incredible, deep, beautiful, intimate connections with, romantic relationship, with friendships, with little kids, with older people, with our families. And if we are like psycho, which most people are, and I'm, coming off of that drug, that's just like, yeah, we can't actually bond. And there's so much, particularly in the past couple of years, that's, this conversation that's now very normalized in a different sense. It's like counterbalancing. It's like, there's, epidemic of loneliness. People, it's a common thing to say, I'm taking a mental health day. They're like, it's just, I have anxiety and depression. Like, it's just like commonplace, all these things. And it's amazing because we're actually speaking to them. We're actually acknowledging like I am lonely. Can we connect? Who wants to connect? But the thing is that if we don't have the life force, we can't actually be emotionally available, spiritually available, present. We don't have the nervous system capacity to even like be like with someone. And then when things actually like come up like with someone and there's triggers and like all these things that happen, no one has the bandwidth. And then they just like freak out and it ends and all this stuff. So we need bandwidth in so many aspects of our being, which requires this life force, this stability, this balancing to be able to connect. So this is integral on the, as I'm saying, the spiritual level to hit these higher states of consciousness, that chi, that life force, that breath, that living essence, that vitality in and through all aspects of our body and being is required. And then on the fundamental levels of human relating and with ourselves, right? And so much of it is just this like go, like hamster wheel like thing that we're often playing out these patterns that like are now not consciously decided. Like we're like, oh wow, years have passed. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Huh? Like there's not the time to also reassess because so much is happening that there isn't that spaciousness. So I'm going to start shifting into the listening aspect, which is the key, and to just repeat the mantra or the question we can ask ourselves is, does my life create room? Does it create space? Does it create opening for listening and for life force? The LL. I hope that doesn't stand for something else. And for availability, right? Of on high and the availability of deep connection with ourselves and other people. And so, I need to talk about the design. Okay, let me talk about the design for just a second. So one thing that I noticed in my exploration into the matrix is that we can design our lives to be more balanced and simplistic and harmonious, which then feeds the life force and the listening. And I know it's like, well, no, you can't. Like, I'm just so busy and I got all these things going on. And I don't know why I'm having like a slight East Coast accent when I'm saying this. But okay, I don't want to speak to specifics because I don't want to cause triggers, but just analyze like, what can make your life more simple? Like, can you shed or let go of certain friendships, of certain relationships, of maybe like even a pet or animal that makes life just more chaotic and more intense? Can you let go of maybe more hours of work? Like, it's like, do you need to work that much? Is there a way to redesign it to make just as much money in less amount of time? Do you need to be doing that extracurricular activity or that extra job, So just like really assessing and having like a big level of self-honesty around what is critically necessary. And my friend Jocelyn, was doing a wonderful assessment of her life. And she's like, what are my 3 biggest anxieties, which are energy drains? What are my 3 biggest ones? And assessing maybe even just one, like what is like the biggest thing, like taking a lot of energy and time that I can just let go of. I mean, it might be a painful conversation. It might take some adjustment. It might take some time to move through it. And that is a really powerful inquiry. And I analyzed a lot of these situations that I was seeing in the Matrix and in these different lifestyles going on, and I reverse engineered them. And yes, it's not just can someone actually do it? If they want to, they can, right? But I was like, wow, if that person just did that thing, let go of that thing, switch this thing, their life would be like 100% better and much more spacious, much more energy, much more availability, all these pieces. So just noting what things can you let go of, what things can you cut down on, what things can you include that nourish you more. You're like, oh my gosh, that 5-minute meditation every day does wonders. It's like the classic yoga class example where it's like, I didn't want to go to yoga, but now that after I went, I felt so much better. Like, what are those things that make you feel so much better? And then what are those things that are like, oh man, that was not a good idea, or I feel exhausted? What are the things that are making you exhausted? And these are the really critical questions that are everyday questions, but absolutely translate to spirit and evolution and quality of life. So, okay, going into the transition through the lens of 5 rhythms, which is a type of dance created by Gabrielle Roth, which she probably got from who knows where, tribes, different intelligence and wisdom that has been around for a long time, I'm sure. And it's amazing. There's 5 rhythms in most cities. It's a beautiful form of ecstatic dance and a great way to balance your energy and all these things. But one of the things that's amazing about it is she talks about how there's 5 different rhythms to life. And when they're in balance and when you have each of them accounted for, life is amazing. Life is great. And when, there's an exaggeration into maybe too many, like 2 of them are more exaggerated and then 2 of them are missing, life goes awry. And so in this dance practice, you dance through all the rhythms and you can see which ones, you're used to and feel good. You can see the ones that you're tired of, and you can see the ones that you need, right? And so bringing this into the conversation, the 5 rhythms are flow, stillness, staccato, lyrical, and chaos. And so most people are living in like staccato and chaos, right? And so there's more of a need for lyrical and flow and just stillness. And that's just generally speaking. So what are the ones maybe that you have? Which ones are you missing? And it's important to understand too, that it's like, okay, I'm going to, for instance, go to that dance as a microcosm of my life and dance through this. But it's interesting because in the unwinding process of our programming, of our nervous system, of our healing, of releasing our trauma, I just said, yeah, you can just do these things and adjust your life and then it can be much more balanced. It's like, it's that way for a reason, because there's so much to dissolve. There's so much to address and forgive and let go of and balance to be able to even do that, to give ourselves, to feel worthy of having the time and space to have energy. I mean, there's so much to this, so it takes a lot of personal work to actually get to the point to be able to gift ourselves this opportunity. And in the 5 rhythms, it can take a long time of needing to suckle, stillness after you've been in chaos for maybe like, I don't know, like days, weeks, years. It's like, I need to be in flow and stillness for years to balance out my 20 years of chaos, for instance. So just realizing that these things is not just like, okay, I'll incorporate a little bit more stillness. It's like, that's how I felt in my early 20s when I was starting meditation practice. I was like, okay, all right, yep, I got my stillness, check, like, let's move on. And it's like, oh man, if I could, I didn't even have the capacity to be in stillness to the depth that I needed to. It was a slow melting process. And so just being really gentle with yourself as you transition, like just a gentle redirect more in the direction and assessing and giving to yourself the things that you need. And slowly over time, you end up a completely different person with a completely different life. And it's all available. I mean, some of my stories. You can create and design your life, even in today's weird, strange world, however you want. It just requires some energy to actually be able to do it, to then be able to get the inspiration and listen. So that's the funny thing is it's like, well, I don't have time to even figure that out. And it's like, I know. So in the transition period, it does take some time and energy to actually then get the inspiration and get the courage, get the fuel to then redesign and redirect. And so I acknowledge this as a process, but I just want to put it out there because it needs to be like called out. Like it needs to be spoken that it's ridiculous, like how culture operates and how everyone's living, and it's not sustainable. And we see that with the levels of anxiety and depression and addiction and like psychosis that everyone is in mass. I won't say the 3-letter word because then it won't come up I don't want to ruin my YouTube stride here. Okay. So the part 2 to my inquiry question mantra of does your life create space, room, and opening for listening in addition to life force is this listening is so important. This is the listening on all levels. This is listening to our hearts, our souls. And it might start out as just listening to like my body's need to like take a nap, or my body's need to, eat a little bit better food or something like that. But the listening of what your body wants, of what feels good, like when interacting with another person, what you need on a deep fundamental level in, say, your relationships or in your expression as a soul, in your work, for instance. Like this deep listening is so necessary because in the listening, which ideally we can be doing all the time, it creates these micro redirects, this micro adjustment, again, to align our life and align our trajectory with who we truly want to be. And these micro adjustments are so necessary because even just a short time going in this wrong or weird direction, like wrong being programmed direction that might not be in your highest good, it's taking you off course. Now, it's all perfect because that off course can be like the rubber band effect and then like swings you over to exactly where you need to be. So this whole life path of the soul and the journey is all beautiful. But there are more deterring, serious things, I think, than there has ever been in our world. So it's like, oh yeah, I kind of got off track, and it's like, but I can just kind of get back on. It's like nowadays, it's like, you have deep social media addiction, or like you have deep, like they're deep things, they're deep holes to come out of. And so it really is important to stay very diligent on these redirects. And the listening is a way to do that. And it's the listening of the body. And that's just basic, and profound somatic work of like, how do I feel straight up like with this person? How do I feel, at this job? How do I feel when I say this thing or when I don't say this thing? Like all of those little pieces. And how would I feel if I did more of this, or if I opened myself to love and to connection? How would I feel if I expressed myself in this inspirational way I got, but I haven't yet, right? So it's like, how can you play with this feeling experience? And not all of you are like have that clairsentience or maybe feeling. It might be emotional, it might be sensations in the body, it might be inspiration. So however you feel, right? However the listening and the interaction of that listening comes through you is perfect. So tuning into that as I'm talking about this, and going into, of course, the listening of your womb, your sacral, your creative center, your willpower, like tuning into the listening from your heart. Like, what is your heart saying? And what is your programmed mind saying? And all of them are valid. And just starting that listening process is a profound practice. And the listening then, of course, with your higher self, the listening with your soul, the listening to your dreams. And that's why I paired these two lovely L's together, because the life force is required for the listening. Because if we don't have enough life force, or we're like jumping out of bed with our bloodshot eyes quickly, and we don't have that moment to sit there and reflect on our dreams, they'll fly away, right? And so it's like, how can we have more of the life force, which is also time and space, to listen to the dreams, to see what the dreams are saying, to listen to our higher selves, and to sit in silence, even if it is for a few minutes, a couple times a day, to see how, we're feeling, and also to see if there's any inspiration or new ways that we could modify and upgrade our lives, or be a better friend and be a better person. Or do something that's more aligned with who we are, right? All these different things. So this listening aspect to our greater self is so necessary. And it's listening to the life pulse of reality itself, and what is needed and what you need, and all the things. So there's so much goodness in it. And being sure to put your life force, which is precious, your time, which is precious, into the things that feed you, and into the things that do the highest good for yourself and others too. There's like things that like don't help really anyone, that we're doing. It's like, what are we doing? So really being in that space of assessment, so that when I decide to go down to a city again and explore, I can look out there on the horizon and be like, yes, like that is inspiring. Yes, I want more of that in my life. And it's like this amazing, like ice cream parlor or something, where I was like, yeah, can I get 2 of those? 1 scoop of that? Yeah, some of those sprinkles, that is amazing, where we watch each other's lives. And instead of looking and being like, oh my God, what is happening? And I think we're doing that with the world right now. We're like, how, what is happening in that country? Oh my God, and more so letting what we don't want be an indicator to help us see what we do want, but to actually look out there on the horizon of life and say, whoa, that's awesome. I want to incorporate more of that, and be that inspiration for each other, and to live in a new way, and to relate in a new way, and to express in a new way that absolutely catalyzes inspiration and hope and joy, and is a model of intimacy and love and all that is good in the world. And that is what is needed right now. And it helps the mass psychosis. Look it up. I'll just say it because it's important to say. That helps this psychosis, this sleepiness, this hypnosis that everyone is in, even just when you do things more in alignment, just a little bit, or you say those certain things that are more in alignment with truth, it starts to break the zombie hypnosis. And so the more that we can do that in our own lives for ourselves, like, we're the only ones that can wake us up. They're trying. They're doing their utmost up there. Our higher selves, the celestials, the galactics. I mean, all of them. They're just like, come on, let's keep on pulsing them. They're doing everything they can. The whole universe is conspiring to do everything it can to assist you. That is truth. And ultimately, we can be as, coaxed and, enveloped in support and love as non-humanly possible, but ultimately it's up to us to wake ourselves up, and it's ultimately up to us to keep ourselves on track. And that requires listening, and that requires life force. Those are two components needed. There's many more, but those are the components that I see that are extra vital, that are like, if we don't have those, and if we don't reincorporate them into our personal lives and into our societal structure, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. So bringing them in, incorporating them, inviting them into our lives. And it can be threatening. It can be a lot to look at and be like, whoa, okay, I got some adjustments to do. One step at a time, one step at a time. And that one step is a huge, huge leap that is an uncrossable chasm of change over time. And you'll become a whole different person, and it will be a beautiful reflection and model to all those around you, and you'll be on track for who you are. And so it's satisfying in the long run. So those are some of the things that I wanted to share today. And I wanted to share in context to this, particularly to the YouTube world right now, is that I'm going to take a definitive, like a clearly intentional break from YouTube for the next couple of months. Now, I know that I've been posting sparingly anyways, like once every month or something like that, and haven't been as consistent. With the podcast, I've been posting almost every week for an entire year. So if you still want more content from me that's fresh, like, go check it out, the Wild and Awake podcast. There's so much goodness there. But in this exploration of what I just shared with relativity and looking at chaos of life in the matrix and going, wow, that is crazy. And then seeing my part of that, of what I'm doing in my life, I'm redesigning everything, and really wanting to take time and space to see myself and listen and reclaim life force, all the things I'm talking about. And one of the things that I haven't done in maybe 5 to 7 years is not created content where I'm speaking, and especially on camera. I've been doing this for like 5 to 7 years, almost every week. There's been a couple months that I've taken off, maybe, I don't know, like altogether maybe 6 months in like 5 to 7 years. But I've continued to show up because this consistency is so important to me, and being there for you is so important to me. And expressing myself in this way is so fun, and I love it so much, and sharing all the things. But what's more important is my consistency and my dedication to growth, and my dedication to being the best version of myself. And so I want to see, and I want to assess and look and be like, and listen and be like, okay, if I'm not doing this, what comes? Like, what wants to come? Who do I want to be? Because this is a huge social identity and perceived identity also within me. And I want to dissolve that to be more of my authentic self. And so I just wanted to let you know, wanted to inform you. So thus, be sure to go sign up for my mailing list so that you're informed next time when I start putting out videos again. I've got tons. Like, that's the funny thing. I've got so much to upload. I just can't. Like, I physically haven't been able to upload this stuff because I've needed to take this break, this space away. So thanks for listening to my update, my personal update there. And I would so appreciate your continued support. And I will be back. And I do love this so much. I'm just super excited and curious as to develop and call forth other parts of myself and see what's there. See what's there. Come on in. So just wanted to let you know. And I still have so many ways that I am supporting. So I mean, this is my like free, awesome, fun content, service content. Now, I still will be supporting my internal community through my Soullight Collective membership, so you're absolutely invited to check that out. It's so fun and connective and keeps us on track and all the good things on the path, so you can check that out. And I'll be doing my exclusive one-on-one sessions, and I'll also be doing my retreats coming up, my spring retreats. The women's retreat still has a few spots left, and then my other one later in May is sold out. So you can be a part of those as well. So I'll still be in those realms, but I just want to see what it's like to not be talking and using my throat chakra and see what other creativity comes through. So again, thanks for your support, and I will see you somewhat soon, and wishing you all the best on your journey and sending you so much love.